Hi, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of the Hear Her Raw podcast. I'm joined today in the Mic'd Up Studios by Rachel, and we are so excited to be bringing you this podcast. As I said, we're recording live from the Mic'd Up Studios in Parramatta, so a huge shout out to the team of Mic'd Up for their support, along with the team from the West Tigers TV, including Gary, Steve, Rob, Hoff, Josh, all of them that have really given us support to see us here today for our very first episode. This episode or this podcast as a whole is for anybody who is a huge West Tigers supporter, just like Rachel and I, but also for the women out there. Our goal is to give the female perspective on rugby league, including the NRL and very soon the NRLW. So today it's just going to be a little bit of an introduction to who we are, what made us West Tigers supporters, a little bit about the game on the weekend that's just been, the weekend that's coming, and then we're going to get into talking a little bit about the women's game and some of our perspectives on some of the issues that the women's game faces, which is very different to the NRL. But before we go any further, I am going to introduce you all to my awesome co-host, Rachel. Rach, how excited are you to be here tonight?
So excited to be here to make my podcast debut, Kel. So we've known each other now for about 3 years through our love of the club and our work through the ambush. So excited, nervous, but keen to get this started.
Amazing. So Rach, tell me, how did you become a West Tigers supporter?
My family's been we're lifelong Balmain supporters. So I don't know how we started becoming Balmain supporters. Being from Cooma, many would have assumed that we would be Raiders supporters, but as it turns out, we went down the Tigers route, and then we all jumped on the West Tigers bandwagon or the West Tigers journey when the joint venture took over. So just, for 35, 40 years now, I've been, loving the Tigers.
And so tell me, what is your first rugby league memory?
Remember the delayed telecasts that they used to have on the 4 o'clock games, and you used to have to wait. You didn't want to turn on the radio, you didn't want to turn on anything, and you waited around to watch the football. That was probably my first memory, sitting around the television with family, take the phone off the hook, and just sitting there and watching the game with my family is probably my first core memory of loving the Tigers and loving football.
Awesome. And growing up, who was your favourite player?
Paul Sirenen.
Paul Sirenen.
So much so that we had a little fox terrier called Ciro, and then obviously grew into Benji Marshall. But Andrew Johns was probably the first football that really gave me the love for the game. I just loved watching him play.
Amazing. With Paul Sirenen, what was it about Ciro that you loved?
He was the first grader I ever met. He came and done a coaching clinic in Cooma many years ago, and I just remember being in awe of seeing this first grade footballer coming down to Cooma and going through a training session. I just thought that was the coolest thing as an 8-year-old.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, going back early 2000s, I was working as a volunteer at Blacktown PCYC, and we were running a fundraising event. And because Ciro's big in the PCYC, and then with the Krispy Kremes, he came out and showed us how to do a really good fundraising event using the Krispy Kreme fundraiser events that you used to be able to do. So what has been the hardest thing about being a Tigers supporter?
It has to be the last 10 years. I moved to Sydney 11 years ago and became a member. And I haven't seen them play finals football since I moved to Sydney. I'm like yourself, Kel. I'm like everybody out there that loves the club. We've dragged ourselves out to Leichhardt, to Campbelltown, to Combank, wherever the Tigers are playing, with hope that we could, be a success. And year after year, we've won 3 games, we've won 4 games. But it's hard. It was hard to continually turn up to those games and cheer the team on when we had very little to cheer on. But that's changing now.
It is indeed. Involved in the ambush as well. So same as me, and that's how we met.
Yes.
So
correct.
You came along to one of our ambush events, and 3 years ago now.
Yep.
What do you love about the ambush? We won't talk too much about the ambush, but we'll get it in there.
I love just being around fellow fans and supporters that love the club. I'm big on small chat, so going around the events and chatting to the patrons that are going to the events, I really enjoy. I love seeing the kids there. I love chatting all things football when I go there. It's just the small chat's probably my favourite thing to do when we go to the ambush events.
Amazing. And is there anything else you would like the podcast world to know about you as a West Tigers supporter?
No, I think we've covered it all. I'd like to hear a bit of your story now, Kelly.
Okay, my story. So I have a bit of a mixed background on how I became a West Tigers supporter. So growing up, my mum's side, my grandfather grew up in Balmain. So he was a Balmain Leagues member from day dot, essentially. I have a photo of me on Santa's knee from 1981, and I'm holding a Tigger, and Tigger is fully decked out in a Balmain Tigers jersey, shorts, socks, the whole kit. So the love of rugby league, similar to you, was instilled before I could probably walk, before I had a choice. My dad, love my dad to death, but he's a Parramatta supporter. He drove buses for Parramatta, and he was pretty hardcore in the world of Parramatta. But thankfully, I followed my granddad's footsteps and went down the path of the Tigers. Then in 1996, I think it was, my auntie on my dad's side, we were at some random thing at Westfields that they do in the school holidays. And there was a trivia question that if you answered the question right, you won a season pass for the Magpies. So anyway, she won that. Then I fell in love with the Magpies. The first jersey I bought with my own money was a West Magpies jersey with number 13 and Langmack on the back. And so in 97, I went to John Paul II, massive rugby league high school. It was, ingrained in me that I was going to be a rugby league supporter. So a few of us used to go out to every game, as many games as we could get to at Campbelltown. It was a bit of a trek from Marryong, and having to catch public transport. It was 2 trains. Bless my dad, he would come and pick us up at all hours of the night, so we didn't have to catch the trains home. But because we were such a big rugby league school, we just got junior passes back in the day. So you could get into any game with these junior passes. So we went to as many games as we could get ourselves to. And so Magpies 96, 97, Paul Langmack was my hero. Still love him, even though he's gone back to the Bulldogs. And then, so when the merge happened, it was almost like it was a match made in heaven. It was meant to be for my family. And so unfortunately though, Granddad passed away in 2004, so he never got to see his beloved Tigers win
He saw it. He watched it.
He didn't get to see the West Tigers win a premiership. But for that night, it was the night before my 25th birthday, October 2nd, 2005, and I was actually doing competitive cheerleading at the time. And so there was a group of us from our squad that managed to become part of the pre-game and halftime entertainment.
How was that, Kel? How was
I
that
was
being on the
actually
field?
there on the field the same day. It's literally still quite a blur. So I was one of those people holding those big white balloons when the Veronicas performed pre-game.
Is that your favourite Tigers memory?
It probably,
or was it winning the result
It's
at the end of the
probably
game?
up there as my favourite memory. We got kicked out of the stadium as soon as we finished our halftime performance. So I actually watched the second half from the overflow because there were just thousands of people in the overflow outside the stadium watching on the big screens. And because we were so far in front, they started selling Premier shirts before the game was finished. So I actually had bought my shirt, got in my car, was on my way, and spent the night just up the road here at the Roxy, dancing the night away in my Premier shirt, and rang in my 25th birthday on an absolute high.
And we're going to be celebrating like that again this year.
We will be, 100%.
Thanks, Kel. That was great to hear. Thank you for your story.
So Rach, we've spoken about wanting to do this podcast for a while. Yep. So, we've both had the chance to be on a couple of other podcasts, the Claws Out podcast, the West Tigers podcast. Shout out to the guys from West Tigers Faithful who offered me an opportunity with them last night. But we've noticed that a lot of these podcasts, or all of these podcasts, are quite male dominated. So I guess that answers that first question, but what do you think is missing from rugby league coverage in the podcast sense? We're seeing more females in mainstream media, but in the podcast world, what do you think's missing?
I don't think there's a podcast that's entirely female-led. I think there might be one or two, but I think there's a shortage of that. So we've probably one of the first to do an entirely led female podcast. And a podcast that is it was also focusing on the NRLW as a big part of what our program is. So I think that's a big part of what we're doing. But I think we're both just passionate about the game, and we just want to come here and talk about it, share our love, share our joy, and speak with everyone who's like-minded.
Yeah, that's right. So we can talk rugby league for hours, and we have. So I think podcast is such a new media that people are really enjoying. So we're not really seeing a lot of TV shows and things like that. Like even Maddie and Kronk on Fox League is pitched as a podcast show. It's just recorded in studio and put on the Fox NRL channel. But you mentioned something that really sort of resonated with me, and that's why we sort of decided to start this podcast, is that the NRLW doesn't necessarily get as strong a voice as the NRL. So why do you think the women's game deserves more attention?
Well, I was looking through some statistics today, Kel. The Broncos Roosters grand final last year had 1.3 million viewers. That's an incredible result for the female game. Over the course of last season, 12 million people tuned into NRLW games to watch. And there's been a 10% increase in females registering to play rugby league in the last 12 months. So you can see from those key points that the female game is increasing, and we should be able to celebrate that. And, these girls are idolising the NRLW girls as well, so we should be able to celebrate that.
Amazing. So we're going to be talking a little bit later about pathways, but the thing that I love about the NRLW and what we can hope to bring to the rugby league market is, and Kezzy spoke about this on her Behind the Raw podcast that she did, I think it was at the beginning of last year. She said, you can't be what you can't see. So if there's young girls out there that want to be rugby league players or want to play professional sport, they now have the opportunity to do that. In the past, it would be once you hit 15, or not even 15, I think it was once you hit that age where sort of puberty hit and the difference.
There was no role for you to play.
That's right.
No competition.
That was it. You went and played netball. You went and played a completely different sport. So that's the thing I love about the NRLW, and the thing that I love about what we are hoping to bring to this market is that over time we'll be looking at bringing in people that are involved in the sport. So mostly, hopefully, females that are involved in the sport in a whole range of different ways, whether it be administration, coaching, players themselves. So we can really give them a voice and show people or show young women. Yep. We're a bit past it. Unfortunately, I used to say back in the day, my dream was to pull on a West Tigers jersey.
My knees won't take it now, Kel.
A little bit past that now. But I think if I was 16 again, I could have lived out that dream if I wanted to.
I guess our dream's taken a different route now. We're doing podcasts, we're doing the ambush.
It has.
So we're still very heavily involved in the game we love. We're just not out there running around. I'm probably not as brave as those girls anyway.
No, I did used to say watching the game that I used to play touch in the day. I used to say I'm glad I play touch, but I did end up with a broken nose playing touch. So I guess, it is a little bit of the same. So we've spoken about this a little bit already, but what do you want this podcast to be, and what do you want it to become?
I want to see new females come into this podcast. So I've had, and I'm sure you've had, a lot of friends of ours who are not at all interested really in rugby league, but they're excited to see females being the focal point, that there's females out here talking. So I know today we've got a few people who have never really watched a rugby league game tuning in. And I think that's pretty awesome that we're attracting females to our podcast that don't know anything about rugby league purely because they want to see females dominating a male-dominated profession, I guess.
100%. I'm here for the girls. Yeah, the girls. So, Rach, let's jump in and talk a little bit about let's talk footy for a little bit now. So over the weekend we had the West Tigers played the Newcastle Knights at Campbelltown Stadium on Sunday afternoon. You would think I would have written down the score, but
42.
Thank you.
22.
I knew it was a 20-point difference because out at the Sherwood on Sunday afternoon, we grabbed Kathy out of the audience and I did a quick chat with her, and she predicted 20 points,
she was correct,
20-point win for the Tigers, and she was on it. But one thing that we've been doing on the Ambush Facebook page after the games is asking people for their thoughts on the game. So we've broken it into sort of three things. A few other podcasts do things such as the good, the bad, and the ugly, or the 3-2-1. but we're going to do something a little bit different. So we're going to go with the spark, the frustration, and the talking points. I'm going to explain what each one of those is, and then Rach, I'll throw to you for your response to each. So the first one is the spark. So what was the moment, the player, or the effort that gave you a lift and showed you what this team can be?
So I've actually looked at all our games this year and what that spark is. I've so proud of that 10-minute period before halftime. As we know, in previous years, the Tigers would always concede tries before halftime. It was,
death taxes and the Tigers being scored on.
Yeah,
yep.
And we have not let in a try in that 10-minute period.
No, we've scored them all.
We scored them all. It's 60 points for and 0 points against. And I think that's just a full credit to our resilience, our fitness, and just our belief in each other and the player that's standing next to us. So to me, that's our spark, and I hope it continues because it's so good to be able to sit there in that last 10 minutes of a half and not be as concerned about letting in that try in the last 30 seconds.
Nice. I think mine's very similar. We've sort of spoken in the past about our bench players, that when our starting forwards come off, we've always lost that impact, that punch through the middle. But we can't say that anymore.
No.
Especially around Royce Hunt, who was the one that copped the most criticism last year.
He's been outstanding.
Royce is just, like at the end of last year, he was basically told, get your act together or there's the door kind of thing. You can go play Reggie's if you can't go find yourself somewhere else to be. And, in the past, we've had West Tigers players that sort of get told something like that. They drop their head, they walk away and they put on more weight or they don't get in the gym as much.
They get them manager to get them out of the contract.
That's right. But Royce Hunt spent the off season like just a complete transformation. He lost at
15 kilos or something.
Yeah, something ridiculous. Like that one of those episodes of Terrell's vlog, he said he'd only lost 6 or 7, but there was a lot more weight than that he's taken off. And then on top of that, you add the fitness that he's bought as well. And so, everybody's saying, back fence Bunty. Well,
but he's not just,
we haven't even seen Bunty because he's not even getting a look in because Royce has just taken it to another level.
Forwards have just been too strong. I mean, anyone at the moment playing in reserve grade, unless there's an injury, is going to struggle to make the first grade team.
100%, 100%. And so Sione is the same. We didn't see as many minutes out of Sione on Sunday night because Benji took him off with a bit of hamstring tightness, so it was a bit of a precaution. But Sione's gone to another level. Terrell got himself his meat pie. Alex Twal, I don't even know where to start talking about the transformation of Alex Twal in the off-season.
He's been playing great football and he was always reliable. He could always, his tackle efficiency has always been amazing. But he's offloading. Yeah. He's like the biggest halfback running around in the competition at the moment. It's so great to see. And you wouldn't meet a nicer guy either. He's just
100%.
One of the best blokes you could ever meet.
Yeah. Okay, so the next part is the frustration. So what was the play, the decision, or the pattern that had you shaking your head?
I think most fans would agree with me when I say Skelton.
I hadn't even thought of that. I think I'd pushed that so far out of my brain.
That was just an absolute brain explosion. We had all the momentum at that point in that game, and it's plays like that could completely kill our momentum. There's no need to take for your percentage play, take the tackle, and then drop out. Yeah,
considering, as you said, the scoreline at the time, it wasn't a necessary pass. Just, have the dropout, either kick it long or kick it short. Have Samuela, do his magic and catch it on the full.
You actually called him to be hooked from the field.
I did.
As soon as that happened.
I did. I definitely did say that. If I was Benji, I would have been like, see ya.
Gary's driving him to Perth. He's offered to drive him to Perth.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Yep. I had multiple people messaging me going, what on earth was he thinking with that? And then even friends watching the replay going, Skelton did that pass again. I don't know. So, yes.
But people are saying it was Macassini's fault because Macassini called for the ball.
No,
Skelton had the ball. Skelton's a more senior player. I mean, it's only, 4 years or something.
But even we don't even talk age. If you talk game time experience, Skelton should know that you go to ground with a ball like that.
That's not Macassini's fault.
No. Okay. So, yes, I agree with that frustration. You've brought that back into my mind. But the other thing that frustrated me a bit, and we sat together for this game, was Adam Dewey not passing the ball a couple of
spoke with
times.
that a few
We
times.
potentially could have scored another 3 or 4 tries. Like, I do understand Taruva by the end of the game was struggling a little bit with that ankle, but we had some major overlaps and Dewey
Glue on his hands.
a bit of a bulldog. But you know, we can't complain because we still won, and he's doing an amazing
He still
job.
ran for how many meters? 200 or something like that.
Well
Something
over
ridiculous.
200 again.
Yeah.
Okay, so the third one is the talking point. So what is the thing that everyone should be discussing coming out of this week's West Tigers performance?
I'm just so excited to see the fans happy. Like, you went to the Sherwood after the game,
I did.
and everyone who's went there said how electric the atmosphere was, and that everybody's just happy. They're cheering the team on. Like, we haven't been here before for a very long time, and I want to keep that energy going. Like, it looks like it's going to be a sellout at Campbelltown on Saturday night. And let's keep that vibe going. Let's keep that energy going. I know the Telegraph came out with an article saying, you know, we're celebrating like we won the grand final. Let us celebrate. Let us celebrate. We've had nothing to celebrate for so many
For
years.
a long time.
And the more wins we get, the bigger we're going to celebrate. So just let us enjoy our moment.
That's right. The Sherwood was crazy after the game. Like, I stayed inside the stadium and watched the first half of Cup, and then it got a bit cold for me, so I bailed at halftime. And I thought by the time I got over to the Sherwood, I would have no chance.
Well, the lineups are out to the
line was
courts.
still all the way out to the end of the roped off section that they had. And I had a chance to talk to Sean Millicamp and Jamie and a couple of the other staff from the Tigers. And they just said that the boys were in absolute shock when they walked through the doors and saw the number of people. One of them apparently turned to Jamie and said, "Why are all these people here for us?" Because we haven't had this kind of, you know, attention before, because that was one of the other hoodoos that we broke on Sunday night. So we broke the 3 games in a row. We broke the Campbelltown curse. We broke the fact that we were going into the game favourites.
Yep.
And the other thing that people don't really think of a lot, and I guess I probably pay a little bit more attention to it because I've been to all of these things, but normally when we have a signing session straight after a game, we lose. So nobody turns up. Because
4 hoodoos.
Yeah.
In
so
one game.
4 hoodoos in one game. So the boys didn't leave the Sherwood till well after 8 o'clock. The people just kept coming, and they just kept signing. And then as they left, they tried to get them out as quickly as possible, but they stopped for photos. They were just so welcoming.
I think they are genuinely pleased with the level of support they're receiving. Like, they know that we've been through hard times, so they're giving back now to the fans that have put in so much over the years when things have been terrible. So I think they're now at that point where they're giving back to us. They know what we've been through, and they're going to join that celebration in with us.
Yeah, and you hear that on every interview that they're doing lately as well. We're just so happy that we can give this back to the fans.
Absolutely. Okay. So what's one thing you feel we need to fix for this week?
I think everybody will probably say the same thing. Benji called it out in the press conference. That game was amazing, except for that 15-minute lapse where we let them score twice.
I should put that down as mine one as well.
Yeah.
That 15 minutes, an 80-minute performance.
Yeah. That's what we need. And that's what we've always asked for, is an 80-minute performance. We were just really lucky that we were so far in front that 2 tries didn't really matter. But in the game the way it is now, every point that you can keep for your for and against can have an impact at the other end of the season. I think we both said it as well. The second they went in with that first try, the crowd just went silent because the PTSD, the PTSD kicked in, and we all just went, we're going to, like, we knew that it was mathematically impossible at that time, but
when you're a West Tiger supporter, nothing's,
No, that's right. It would just be the most peak thing for us.
But have a think of the 2 players that went off at the same time at that point.
Yeah.
We lost Sam to an injury, and we lost Arpy.
It's exactly the same as the Bunnies game when you think of it.
Yep.
You know, we only lost that game by 4, but we lost Jerome in the last few minutes. And when we had lost Jerome, we had taken Appy off to have a break.
Yep.
And so, again, that could have been a game that ended very differently if those 2 stayed on the field.
100%. Well, Sam and Arpy control so much of our defensive speed and our the leadership in defence. And as soon as those players went off, the defence dropped. They didn't have their leader out there barking, that defensive line coming up quickly. And we all know how well Sam does in defence. He comes off that line so hard and hits so hard. So as soon as both of those boys came off, the defensive line struggled a little bit.
Yeah. And 100% that's what Benji would be working on with the boys this week is, we've managed to have that next man up mentality with Jock replacing Romy, but now we've got to think of that in-game situation where if we do lose a player in-game, we need, that person that slots into that position. Like Seyfarth came on and he was put on report. He was on the field for 12 minutes, like classic Alex Seyfarth energy that is. I still don't know what it was for though because he wasn't actually charged.
It was in the last minute of the game after Knights scored the last try, but I don't know what it was for either.
I feel like the ref went, oh, hang on, Alex Seyfarth's on the field. We better put him on report because that's what we do. Okay, so let's look forward to this weekend. We are playing the Broncos, so the reigning premiers, at Campbelltown again.
Yep.
So it's not often we have 2 home games in a row at Campbelltown. 7:35 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. What do you think is the biggest threat from the Broncos in this game?
Well, there's been a lot of talk that they're the new baby Broncos. We've been hearing it, so many injuries for the Broncos. Look at their back seven. Their back seven is still unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
They've got that much speed in their outside backs. So to me, that's probably our biggest threat. We need to nullify their speed in their backs. We need to be moving up in defence quickly, taking out any space for them to move, because if they get any sort of space, they're going to come straight through.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Reedy last night on West Tigers Faithful, he said that 1 to 7 is exactly the same as the grand final, except for Reece Walsh. Like, yes, Reece Walsh is a big impact player, but that's only 1 out of 7 players that's missing.
You still got Stags.
Yep.
Shibasenka, Mariner.
Shibasaki, yep.
Karapani.
Yeah.
Like, that's still an unbelievable backline.
Jesse Arthurs may not be, Origin Australia player, but he's still a very good first grade player. Key matchups. Where do we need to put our energy?
Our forwards need to dominate. We need to get in their faces. Like I said, we need to make sure we're not giving them any space for their outside backs. So our forwards need to be working their defensive line. They need to be bringing them up. And we need to target Payne Haas's shoulder. Because, honestly, like if we can take him out of the game, get him to do a lot of defensive work or attack his shoulder, and he makes less post-contact meters, it'll go a long way to us winning the game.
Yeah. So last weekend, I put in our chat that I had actually put Payne Haas as my captain in Supercoach because anytime I change my captain in Supercoach, they get injured, and he actually got taken off the field at part of the game. They said in commentary it was a hamstring, so I don't know whether it was hamstring or but obviously he's not 100%.
From what I read this morning, it was a shoulder injury that he picked up. So I would be targeting a little bit on the shoulder.
Well, yeah. So Terrell May, Alex Twal, Fanua, get in there, boys, and keep him quiet, because it's so right. Once the Broncos get a sniff of momentum, they can really run away with it. And if we don't keep it close, if they do get out, like we've seen in the first couple of games, we've let our opposition get out to 2 tries before we switch on.
We can't do that to the Broncos this weekend.
We can't do that. No, we need to have the same kind of game that we had on Sunday, where we're the first to score and we start with the momentum.
They'll be ready to go this weekend, the Broncos. They'll be fired. They'll be ready to go.
So we've had a few changes to our team, but for the first time in a long time, it feels like it's because we have our first string players healthy again and ready to play. So what are some of the key selection changes that Benji's made this week, and what are you most excited about?
Makasini going back to the wing. I was saying it to you on the weekend. He's playing really well. I don't want to discredit him. He's only 18. But we need to get Makasini back out to the wing, and we need to have Tiny on his inside, because I am so looking forward to that combination this weekend.
Yep, I'm so looking forward to seeing Tiny back. When you watch the doco that the club put on at the beginning of the year, as well as, again, Terrell's vlogs, he put in so much work in the off-season. He got himself to the fittest that he said he's been probably in his whole career. And to lose him so quickly in that Cowboys game, we didn't get that. We haven't really benefited from his off-season work. So I'm excited for him to also be able to show, what he put himself through in that off-season.
I'm excited to see the left side. We were talking about it all preseason, that left edge.
Yes.
And seeing that combination really come through.
Yeah. Well, the right edge on Sunday, they basically stole the show.
Yep.
That's all. Majority of our points came down that edge. But I think that was because we identified very early that the left edge defense of the Knights wasn't the greatest. So this weekend we've got Romy coming back as well as Tiny.
Yep.
So that means that, with Adam and Romy, they sort of play a little bit each side of the field, whereas Adam felt he dominated that right side, and we didn't really have that double side attack. So hopefully that left edge is going to get a little bit more ball this weekend. So you've got Sam, Tiny, and Massey,
and then
on the wing.
Luai doing his little business behind the scenes as well.
His little business. So what is the tactical focus for Benji and the boys this game?
I think we spoke about it a little bit before. Like I said, we have to dominate the forwards. We have to completely dominate the forwards. So I think Benji will focus a lot on that. But I'd like to hear your thoughts too, Kel.
My thoughts. I think the big thing is Royce and Sione are going to be able to have a field day, I feel, because our bench compared to their bench is chalk and cheese.
Depleted.
Their bench is very depleted because they have a lot of their losses are in that middle of the park. So Carrigan's out. Yep. Their first three hookers are out.
Picked up somebody from almost park football or something.
Yeah. So apparently they've got a fairly big body that's going to be starting in the number 9 jersey.
Josh Rogers, I don't know anything about him.
So he's not a conventional 9 body shape. Okay. So he's probably not going to have that same lateral movement and that speed that Appy does. And then their bench hooker, it's his debut. So very, wet behind the ears, not going to be the same as when we bring on either Jock or Latu to replace Appy or to support in that middle. So I think it gives Royce and Sione the opportunity, and then either Jock or Latu, whoever it is that they bring in, that we've been doing and sort of having that 3-man sort of almost the 3 halves, which just makes me laugh saying that because you can't have 3 halves. But I think they're going to be able to have a field day. Once the Broncos middle forwards, starting forwards come off, they've got no Pat Carrigan. Like Pat Carrigan is their second phase play. He is
ties
the one.
Up defense a lot as well.
He does. Without him, I think Royce and Sione can have an absolute field day with their
around their tied forwards.
That's right.
Yep.
So match prediction, a bold prediction, and a score.
Okay, so I have gone 24-12.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that Makassine is going to score 2 tries this weekend. 2 tries. I just think with him being, like I said, back in his wing position, Tiny on his outside, I think he's just going to have a field day out there.
Nice. Okay, I said Tigers by 12, so I'll stick with that. I don't actually know how many points either side will score, just that we'll score 12 more than them. And my bold prediction, I think it's going to be my bold prediction every week until it happens, is Alex Twali's going to score a try.
First try, please. First try.
Cool. Any last thoughts of this weekend's game before we move on?
I did take Reynolds down a little bit. I know he's coming back from injury, but his kicking game always causes us trouble. We need to ensure that we nullify his kicking game. We need to have moving up on him every single time he kicks the ball.
Yeah. Bingo. Alrighty. Let's jump in and quickly talk about, well, not quickly. That's what we're here for. We're here to talk about the girls' game. But at the moment, we only have the opportunity to talk about Lisa Fiola and Tasha Gale because the Harvey Norman and the NRLW doesn't start. 80 days from today it was announced until the NRLW kicks off, which is very exciting. But we had some success in our Pathways girls on the weekend. So do you want to tell us about the Lisa Fiola girls and how they went on the weekend?
Yeah, so I watched this game on the train as I was hitching my way around Sydney to the Ambush event. Our girls had a wonderful win, 32-6 versus Penrith. Our girls absolutely dominated in defence. They were in their faces. They cut away any chance of Penrith putting on any form of attack. It was brilliant to watch. So 32-6 win, and that'll move them into the second round of the finals.
Lovely. And so who are they playing this weekend?
They will be playing the Central Coast Roosters, at Labour Park in around Prospect area.
So it's near Blacktown.
Near Blacktown
Yep.
way, 1 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah, which is a shame because we
We would
probably
have loved to go out.
we would have loved to have gone out there, but with the game and our ambush event on Saturday, a little bit of a tight turnaround. Unfortunately, though, the Tarsha Gale girls, tell us about those.
The Tarsha Gale girls went down 26-16. So it was a well fought out game. They also played Penrith. Penrith finished 5th on the board, on the ladder above them. So they were playing against probably a team that has won more games this year. But it's still a fantastic effort to make the finals, and hopefully some of those players from that team can go on to further success in Harvey Norman and NRLW.
Amazing. So on that note, for anybody that doesn't follow the girls' game or pathways in any way, who is one player, and I know you've got a couple more than one, which is totally fine. So who are some West Tigers players that people should be looking out for?
Okay, so Isabella Brown, who is a second rower in our Lisa Fiola, had an outstanding game. She scored the first try, the opening try, and she runs hard and she's great in defence. So she's one person. So Isabella Brown. Dawn Tui, also from our Lisa Fiola team. She's the hooker and the captain. She's a crafty little hooker. I think we've got a real good one there if we can keep her. But the big name that I like is Olivia Large. She's a lock. And her brothers actually used to be part of our...
I did. Yeah, when you said Large, I thought Onatoni and Ashton. I think
who've gone to Manly. So hopefully we can keep her. But I think Manly are looking to have a 2027 NRLW team. So
maybe we can bring the boys back.
I don't know where they'd fit in.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Very true.
But she's a very crafty, strong-running lock, and I think she's going to be a huge name in NRLW.
Amazing. Thank you. All right. So Lisa Fiola and Tarsha Gale. Tarsha Gale is now wrapped up. Lisa Fiola, we still have this round, and if the girls progress, we'll definitely let you know the outcome of that game next week. But now let's turn our eyes to the NRLW. So as we said, there's exactly 80 days until the 2026 NRLW season kicks off. So we still have a while to go before we can start previewing games and talking about team lists and things like that. But we want to spend some time each week talking about some of the issues around the women's game as a whole. So a lot of people who don't follow the NRLW might not know or not even have an idea that some of these issues actually do exist. So we've got 3 topics that we'll cover off today. We might only talk about the first 2 in depth, and we might save the next one for next week.
Yeah, perfect.
But the first one is a big one that the Tigers especially have been impacted by in the last 3 seasons. Yes. So and we're going to talk about the pregnancy policy. So in 2024, the West Tigers signed Amelia Hiaku from the Parramatta Eels. Before she'd even stepped foot on the field, she announced that she was pregnant. So she missed the whole 2024 season. She did come back and play every game in the 25 season though. Last year, the beginning of the year, Rakia Horn announced that she was pregnant. We lost our strike centre. For the whole of the 2025 season, she had twins, massive toll on the female body to have one baby, let alone multiples. And then recently the club has announced that Jade Fanua has just announced her pregnancy as well. So we're now going to be missing Jade for the whole 2026 season. So Rach, this has caused a little bit of a stir amongst rugby league fans, mostly from the male persuasion. But before we go into that, can you explain for those that don't really know what the pregnancy policy actually involves, just high level?
So I've had a bit of a look over it. So when Jade Fanua can no longer play, obviously, because of her pregnancy, that's when we signed Shaylee Bent from the Titans. Now, she's not covered in the salary cap. There's a salary cap exemption for players replaced due to pregnancy. So she'll come into the team. Now, depending on how long a player's contract is will depend on what the contract around pregnancy will look like. So there's about 12 months paid paternity leave that the players will receive while they're away from the field, but they're also offered roles within the club. So that might be an admin role or in merchandise or media, whatever it might be. So they're kept connected around the club where they're not playing and training on the field. So that's probably the scope of it. It is reviewed annually from the NRL and the Rugby League Players Association. So if there's anything that's not aligning, it will be fixed by the end of the year. But basically it's there to protect the female during pregnancy and in postpartum to ensure that they receive the financial compensation that they duly deserve, but also the physical recovery when they come back.
Yeah, because as we mentioned, like pregnancy does crazy things to the female body.
Absolutely.
It totally changes your physiology. It changes all of the connective tissue in your body. So all your ligaments and your joints totally change. Your muscle mass changes. Everything changes, especially around the core, which
and they do bring in special doctors into the club when a female has given birth, so they can help fully understand those issues that have gone on with carrying a baby and giving birth.
That's right. Yep. So you saw this more than I did on Twitter/X. Some of the comments made by men. So what was the reaction, and why do we need to change this?
There was mostly a positive reaction. I'm not going to sit here and say that, it was a 50-50 negative or positive split. Most were saying, congratulations, glad these policies are in place to protect our players. But there were a few quite misogynistic comments out there that got me quite fired up. So we're going to unpack that a little bit. So there was comments from men to say that any female that signs an NRLW contract should be on birth control.
Mm.
Like they have a right to say what we should take and how we should treat our body.
Yeah.
That they should have their contracts ripped up. You fall pregnant, sorry, out the door, there goes your job.
Yep.
You get your contract ripped up. And that a female should have to make a choice between their football career or giving birth to a child.
Interestingly, coming back to that Kezi episode from Behind the Raw, she did say that she had to have that conversation with her partner when she decided to sign an extension on her contract because, Kezi's probably one of the older girls in the NRLW. And so she has to think about that. When you sign an NRLW contract, at the age of 30 for another couple of years, you've really got to weigh that up. It's like, do I play footy or do I have a family? So it is like these girls aren't making these decisions lightly.
And we don't know what journey these females have taken to fall pregnant. We don't know what if they've been through hardship. We don't know. And we're not to judge what decision they make. It's their body. It's their choice ultimately. And to have telling a female to take birth control to me is just absolutely absurd. And coming from a male.
Yeah.
Come on. We'll probably unpack this a little bit more down the track once we read the policies more, once we review the policies. And
so from what you've read though, do you think there's anything that needs to change from the policy?
It's quite a thorough policy from what I was reading through both today and over the last few weeks. Like I said, it's there to protect the females during pregnancy and in postpartum. They've got medical, the doctors to come in to support them. Like I said, they're offered jobs if they want to take them to be part of the team. So they're not using that connection, that team connection whilst they are pregnant. So it's quite a thorough policy. But like I said, it looks like it's reviewed annually. So it'll be reviewed again at the end of the year. And then if there's anything that needs to be fixed, then they will obviously fix it.
Amazing. I'm just looking at the time and I think we might save our other two topics for another episode because I really want to talk about this weekend a little bit more with the ambush. So this Saturday afternoon, do you want to tell people what we're doing for the ambush this week?
Okay, so we have our ambush event at the Sherwood again this weekend. So it's starting at 5:30. We have got our third guest of the year. We've had Sean, we've had Gary Jack in the weekend, and we've got Tino Tavana, who will be our guest speaker. So that was just found that out this afternoon. Right, so we're excited to have that.
Breaking news.
So, which is really exciting. And he's just signed a contract extension with the club, and he's from the Macarthur region. So, if we're trying to celebrate the Macarthur region, we've got one of the best up and comers at our ambush event on Saturday talking.
Yeah. I think our reaction was all the same this afternoon. So for anybody that doesn't know what the ambush is, we run game day events. Yep. So we've been doing this for about 5 years now. So Gary and Steve, they sort of kicked off the idea. They approached the club and said, we want to do something on game days in order to, bring the fans together. I sort of got roped in as the token female at the time, which, I'm loving. Like, I'm so glad. I remember the first time I met Steve and Gary was at Leichhardt Oval at a Manly trial, I think it was. And I just walked up to them and I'm like, hey, so my mate knows you and told me to come and talk to you and, we'll do this thing. And here we are
now.
5 years later. So the goal is we have a guest at every event.
Yep.
So obviously working with the club to get those guests. And it can be really hard for the club to provide us with somebody because either it's an away game and so the whole team's traveling or nobody's injured, which is a real luxury. We don't have players. But we literally found out at 1:55 this afternoon.
I was doing
think
some stuff for today, like doing some podcast notes, and then my phone's going off and like, guess who we've got? Like Mari was like, guess who we've got?
Mari was very excited.
She was very excited.
So big shout out to Ben for coming through from the club and getting us Tino. We are super excited to have him. So we'll be out at the Sherwood with also the guys from the Claws Out podcast. The West Tigers TV crew will have a podcast chat again, which we'll hope to have a few different faces on the podcast chat this week. We'll have Yodi's quiz and we'll also have the Lucky Door prizes as well.
And we'll be going live for the first time thanks to Mic'd Up Studios.
That is correct. We will be going live. So you can catch us on this channel on Saturday afternoon. So episode 2. Next week. I am so excited about this. We will have our first guest in studio, and this is a woman who I have looked up to in the world of rugby league since the first time I met her about 14 years ago. I think 12, maybe it was 12 to 14 years ago. I think it was 12 years ago, but it was definitely when she was our female chairperson. So I am super excited to announce that we will have Marina Go on the Hear Her Raw podcast next week.
Great first guest.
Massive shout out to Marina for all of the support that she's shown the women's game. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Yep. Without Marina,
we wouldn't have our NRLW pathway assistants.
That is correct.
And she's also achieved so many great things in the game as well. Like she's at between the chairperson position, that's correct. Yeah. So, which is fantastic to see females leading, like we had spoken about before, a predominantly male-dominated profession.
Yeah, that's correct. So, you can follow us on Instagram, Hear Her Raw Pod. All of our information will be up there. You can also subscribe to the West Tigers TV channel so that you don't miss any of our episodes as they go live. But Rachel, thank you so much.
Thank you for being so much fun. And thank you for having, this is my podcast debut. So I'm so honoured to sit alongside you and make my podcast debut with you.
If anybody had have seen us before we went live, the two of us were sitting here quietly because we were both extremely nervous. But the second we got started, this is what it is. Talking footy, sharing our love of the West Tigers.
This is our relationship. This is our friendship.
This is
footy
it.
Chat.
I had optional things, we didn't even get through
our whole run sheet.
Our run sheet. So we've got lots more to talk about in the future. But thank you everybody for tuning in this afternoon. We hope you've enjoyed the first episode and we hope that there'll be many, many more to come.